Ladies and gentlemen, are we live? Yes, we are. We are live again. It's Taco Tuesday, July the 7th, 2026. And I hope everybody's doing well on this Super Tuesday. I hope it's nice wherever you are. And thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. And let's mention this right away. If there's anything you want to talk about, give us a call, 949-629-3820. The lines are clear usually when I start, and we'll see what happens from there. So, guys, I assume everybody kind of keeps up with current events, and we are with Trump in office, there's never a shortage of stories that just highlight the all hands on deck situation I think we're in, and I know it's really incongruous to have to be sitting out here on a nice 70-degree day, not too many clouds in the sky. uh, so it's really weird to be in this kind of an environment, but yet realize that the world is burning around us. And I think that as a general proposition, there's this aspect of living in the western part of the United States, and that is you get places that might have 300 days of sunshine, like I think Taos, New Mexico, or other places in Colorado. Uh, so what happens is these oh, excuse me. When you get to these places in like Colorado and all that, things are of course different. But like I said, just having this degree of sunshine every day, I think puts people in a better mood, and that's probably the basis for that seasonal affective disorder thing that they have, which is a shorthand way of saying, or maybe a longhand way of saying that clouds kind of and rain bum people out. I guess you could, go to Seattle and take a poll, but I don't think we need to repeat that. But of course, what I want to start out talking about today is, of course, Trump's continuous outrages. Guys, this is, if there was ever time to join your local Democrat club and sign up, this is it. But let me kind of give you a little conclusion to what I was looking at. And the conclusion is, when looking at the broad arc of American presidency, you won't find another commander in chief who operates with that specific brand of real estate style self naming mega branding. No other president plastered their own name on commercial towers, hotels, and products while leading the nation, or treated the office quite so explicitly as an extension of his personal corporate brand. There are previous examples from history showing that we've always had, liars and populists and kind of corrupt administration, but this is just different on the sheer scale, and the scale is so extreme that let's make this absolutely positively clear: there is absolutely no moral equivalence. Just like there's no moral equivalence to Richard Nixon installing a bowling alley and Trump knocking down the East Wing and putting up a UFC place for a fight. It's just not. It really is apples and oranges. Of course, they don't. They only tell you the good stuff, and there's a reason, because there's so much bad stuff. They'd be really ashamed. But anyway, past presidents always operate under the shared assumption that the office of the presidency and the institutions of the U.S. were bigger than they were. They may have been in vain, but they still bowed to civic norms established by George Washington. The core of my argument is that Trump fundamentally rejects those traditional restraints and replaces institutional reverence with personal celebrity. And a point I want to make is that up until Trump, every president has considered themselves a caretaker of the nation until the next president got elected. So everybody had this, like a fiduciary duty to look out for subsequent administrations and subsequent iterations of the U.S. However, now we get a guy who comes in, and rather than taking the normal route that he's a caretaker to preserve the institutions, he thinks the institutions are his and his alone, and his to rule over. I didn't say govern, I said rule. And I did a little post today that The word for the day is tyrant, and you guys kind of get the message. But let's think about this, and I'll go back to some of the you know some of the daily stuff that's going on now, and kind of apply all this to tell you exactly how I reached my conclusion. But right now, as everybody knows, Trump is in Turkey, and uh, he's not being very kind to our allies. Uh, yeah, I don't know if Putin is suggesting this, but he's just going to blow up NATO. And believe me, Vladimir will be so happy that Trump will get Russian caviar his and Cash Patel gets some vodka. But yeah, this is just horrible. So anyway, uh, and let's so what he does. Let's say he was being he had his legal problems before. So what's he do? He puts his personal judges not only on the trial bench but on the appellate bench. And that, and they're obviously in the Supreme Court. So he has literally remade the judiciary so that there's a direct line of corruption from Trump through the attorney general down to the judges at all levels. I mean, this is bad. And I got to tell you, Trump reminds me of the kind of kid that when he gets invited over to play with somebody else's kid, he'll go in and he'll break every toy around. And then when the parent comes in and says, "Who did this?" Trump's the one that will point towards the innocent kid and say, "He did it, but I alone can fix it." So these mental problems have been, existing for a while. And under the pressures of the presidency, I'm sure they're starting to crack. Of course, Trump, it's a good thing he doesn't let the pressures of the presidency get in the way of his $2 billion annual payday. And there's just something inherently wrong when a president of the United States has enough time to make $2 billion with his kids and relatives and all this stuff. I mean, in there, doesn't that just show a kind of a disdain for the routine job of the president, which is the leader of the country, to make sure the laws are executed properly? Don't forget, it's three co-equal branches. Not one is supposed to be superior to the other. Uh, Somehow that got lost in the Republicans' unitary executive theory. But that's just another one of those academic theories that these guys use to get their results, or whether they are appropriate or not. Right? I mean, they'll throw a legal citation in there to justify it, like Alito does. And then you get Ketanji Brown Jackson and Senator Sotomayor and Elena Kagan just saying, "No, guys, that's wrong, and this is the fault in your logic." And of course, they don't get paid much for doing that. But anyway, just to notice what he did. So, but what this does is this makes people doubt the rule of law. And that's the foundation of our society, the rule of law. And the phrase, and the shall derive their power from the consent of the governed. I mean, that's pure democracy. That's, you get to choose your leader, not his family is the royal family and they take over. Or think about way back when the powerful the leader might have been the guy that was able to kill the next strongest leader. Or let's say you had a child born under a full moon, or an eclipse, whatever it is. That used to be enough to claim superiority. But now, with a mentally deranged individual, claiming superiority is the mental illness, and we've got to deal with it. And the best thing we can do, guys, is let's get together and, I mean, vote in force in November. And I'm going to tell you what I always tell you. We'll beat them so bad they'll be screaming for mommy. They were expecting a blue wave, and we gave them a blue tsunami. So we really do, I mean, I can't state the seriousness enough. But anyway, while he's before he leaves to go to Turkey to visit Putin's best buddy, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, what did he manage to do? He managed to insert himself into a worldwide sporting tournament. Uh, there's just nothing else to say. There's never been a person who wants to interject himself into everything like this. And of course, when you interject yourself into everything, you're meaningless and your words become nothing, which is, and when Trump, and you've got to assume these days and times that whatever the guy says is a lie. And I've told you how and why I assess this. I look at the statement. I look at the individuals on both sides, the guy that says it's true, the guy that says it's not true or hoax, whatever. And I check their reputations for telling the truth and having credibility. And of course, credibility, I think, comes from the Greek credibilis or something, which meant worthy of being believed. And in that, the central question when you talk to anybody, are they worthy of being believed? Do they keep their word or not? And I think that it's pretty well established which side of the fence the president falls on. One of my friends used to ask another guy if he was being a little economical with the truth. Like, you might ought to use a little more freely. It might help. Uh, so anyway, how does Trump insert himself into the international sporting event? Well, of course, you guys all know what happened. The World Cup, the American player gets a red card, which means he can't play in round of 16, and he's a really good player. I think he's leading striker, whatever they call those guys. Uh, so, of course, Trump calls his buddy Infantino. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Infantino, the guy that dreamed up the first FIFA International Peace Award that just so happened to have gone to Donald Trump? Just he's made it up out of thin air, but the guy's got such an ego problem that he gratefully accepts it. So, what does Trump do? He calls the Infantino and says, would you relook at this or whatever he says? And his exact words are of no concern because you get the general principle, right? He's calling the head of a sporting organization to complain about a penalty call. I mean, that would be like, I don't know, who's the owner, Stan Kroenke of the Rams, calling the NFL about a play that got called wrong. I mean, sometimes you just you're not part of the deal, and the guy has absolutely no self restraint. So of course he will be part of every deal, and you can assume along with that there will be Tom Friedman's version of the Donroe Doctrine. And Friedman says, I thought this was really great, that if Trump hates you, he'll tariff you. But if he needs you, or if you need him rather, he will extort you. And the best example I have of that is the initial call with Zelensky way back in, was that 2016 or so, in which Zelensky's calling for weapons. And Trump says something like, Vladimir, old pal, old buddy, old friend of mine, I'd really like to ship you these brand new, hyper effective American missiles and air defense systems. I really would like to do this. But, I kind of need a little favor, like maybe help sink my opponent in the presidential election, Joe Biden. Huh? How's that? And that's how he started out. And, it's not like the guy changes. He's 80 years old with, dementia. Well, he just, and I'll give him this much. He's, periodically he is on, but, that's like saying the broken clock's right twice a day. You don't take much comfort in it. So of course, the fact that he called, the fact that he inserted himself, regardless of the outcome, right? And so, guys, let's just kind of examine a few more what I would call personality disorders, such that he is an imminent danger to everybody. I mean, what if the guy just decides to blow up NATO, or he's to teach Europe a lesson? He's going to withdraw another, I don't know, 10,000 troops. When America had military bases in Europe and particularly Germany and Ramstein, and there were a couple others. Uh, but those were more than just uh, d- defense stations. They were they spread American goodwill, and that's an intangible. And of course, Trump doesn't really care about intangibles unless they're his intangibles. Uh, so anyway, let's kind of move along just a second because I want to tell you that on in the Financial Times that guys know how much I like the Financial Times. Uh, they had two headlines on the front page. The first one had a big picture of Zelensky with a really nice drone. And the title was Battle in the Sky Will Determine the Course of the Ukraine War. Zelensky warns Putin as they just so happen to bomb another refinery that takes out more gas production. And the Russians are having to wait, I don't know, a day and a half to, see what kind of fuel they can buy. And, they're lucky they have some. But you gotta have to assume that there's time that Zelensky has the upper hand now, and everybody knows it. And Putin is slowly being pushed into a corner. And he's deep down, he does have concerns. I mean, he knows this isn't going well, um, and he knows his options are limited at this point. What he does, God only knows. So we're here for the duration. I can only hope that the Europeans arm Zelensky and Ukraine to the teeth. We should always have been ashamed that we did not step up like we should have when Putin first invaded Ukraine. And we warned Ukraine that there were 100,000, 150,000 soldiers at the border, but Zelensky was convinced it was a war game or something, that they weren't going to be invaded. And of course, that he was wrong, and the consequences have just been tragic for the last 4 years. I cannot imagine the number of people killed and maimed. I can't imagine the number of children, men, women, everybody that's just scarred for life from having to go through this, or watch neighbors just be bombed and having to identify bodies. And it's been a tragedy, and we should have worked really hard up front. I That's one of my few disagreements with Joe Biden. I would clearly have armed him to the teeth, come what may. The United States stands for things, or stood for things, and sometimes you got to take a stand. And this was one, and it was just an opportunity missed. Of course, Biden would say, "Well, I didn't want to start World War III," and I understand that. But like I said, America has an obligation to stand up as the leader of the free world. But see, that's not exactly what Trump wants. He doesn't want to be the leader of the free world. He wants to own the free world, lock, stock, and barrel. And I've heard that he's planning on using his office to try to hit the $50 billion mark when he leaves office. For whatever reason, that seems, I know it's 50 times more than 1 billion, but a billion is still, a lot of money. So to go from being corrupt to being just a ruthless tyrant is just a hop, skip, and a jump for someone with these personality traits. But I did not give you the second headline from the Financial Times. European outrage as FIFA reverses strikers ban after Trump intervention. Okay, this is the Financial Times. I mean, this is a big newspaper, and if you looked at headlines from newspapers around the world, you'll see that they take this very seriously. This isn't just a game for these guys. But the mere fact that he inserted himself, he saw a need to insert himself, is pathetic. Nobody won from this deal. All that happened was the Americans got cleaned out by the Belgians in the next game, 4-1. But you know what that was really like? At the end of the game, all I can imagine was a Belgian player flipping the bird at Trump while peeing in his green algae reflecting pool, yelling "goal." That's that's really what should have happened. And that's, believe me, if you were to go to Belgium today, you would see more than one cartoon or image of somebody dumping on Trump because of this, or and worse, they even dumped on the United States. I mean, it's not like he operates in a vacuum. He has the authority that we gave him, or you gave him when you voted for him. It's still beyond reason to me that anybody did vote for him, but obviously enough people did. And just so you know, if anyone wants to dispute all this or to agree or just chat, give us a call 949-629-3820. The lines are open, and we'll let's get back to this FIFA thing. I mean, this shook the world, and it is just he just doesn't care. And if he doesn't care and he can't, because he doesn't read, he remains ignorant. And my favorite way to illustrate this was the Kristen Welker interview where he stormed out and she's asking him for evidence or proof of election fraud. And Trump goes, "We got plenty of evidence." And Welker goes, "Well, can we see it?" Guy goes, "We got plenty of evidence. We'll show you in court." Well, can we see it? Well, no. And so Welker says something like, "Well, how do you know it's true?" And Trump goes, "I know it's true." And she says, "Well, how do you know it's true?" And he says, "I know what I see and I know what my people tell me." So those are the two requirements to have something accepted as truthful. It has to come from the inside, right? And he's got, if possible, he'd like some visual evidence. But visual evidence. It's funny. While the implication is there that he clearly wants a little. Um, yeah, you see the live footage from January 6th, and you wonder how January 6th could possibly be another day at the Capitol, and we all know it wasn't, and we all know it's a clear lie. We know the election fraud was a lie. But again, he keeps repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And that's the insidious, dangerous part. Is eventually, it becomes the message. Eventually, if you repeat something often enough, I think this is a German World War II propaganda thing, that if you repeat something enough, it becomes the truth. Think about that. If you repeat it enough, it becomes the truth. Or how about the old Soviet leader, Russian leader? What was his name? Was it Brezhnev? One Gorbachev. It was before those guys. Anyway, the notion was, it was Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev. And Khrushchev said something like, "If you give me a child for the first 6 years, I will sow a seed that cannot be unsown." And, you know, you can only assume that some seed didn't take well on the plant in the Trump mental garden, to say the least. But it's and tomorrow there's going to be a Tom Friedman article in the editorial, or opinion, I guess. And I'm going to tease the title. We'll talk more about it later. But the title is "Trump is Fleecing Us." I mean, you reckon? I mean, you just don't, make $2 billion, and and when you think about the inherent wrongness of this, it's the Republicans' fault, because everybody knows it, everybody sees the corruption. They just, if it's our guy, it's okay. And I'm astounded, particularly when he went to Mount Rushmore on July 3rd. And of course, there's George Washington. I cannot tell a lie. Chop down the cherry tree. Then you've got Honest Abe Lincoln. And then you got Don the Con Trump. I mean, oh, but they still want his name up there. Like, but he disgraces everybody else. And they're just enablers, which comes full circle to the midterms. And we've got to vote out the enablers. I mean, he's bad enough, but it's the people that let it happen. and you can go up and down Republican leadership, up and down the members of the Senate and the House. Oh, sorry about that. And you'll see just complicity. They all, if it's our guy, it's okay. I've yet to figure out how that serves the country. That seems to me like an exercise of consolidation in power. And again, if anyone wants to dispute or argue or, give us a call, 949-629-3820. I notice there's not tons of people jumping in to defend these actions. And you can only conclude that what he does is indefensible, even though the Republicans kind of, wink and nod and let it go. It's indefensible. And if the predictions are right, this could be a really, really devastating midterms for the Republicans. And, and as it should be. Exactly why did those guys deserve to be reelected? Well, I mean, what was their major accomplishment? And, oh, I remember now. See, their major accomplishment was that big, beautiful bill, the one that took away people's food stamps, SNAP benefits, the one that closed the rural health facilities. Uh, that bill, the one that added 3.8 trillion to the debt, and in exchange gave it to a tax cut for the really wealthy. I mean, is that a popular set of proposals for the Republicans to be selling in the midterms? I don't know how in the world you sell that. I think I think Florida had, it's not uncommon for states to have 100,000 people kicked off the Medicare rolls because they couldn't afford the health insurance premiums without the subsidies. And the subsidies would have been paltry. But at that, you have to realize that Trump's priority is what, there were some guys, the Wayans brothers, Damon and Holt, and anyway, Keenan and Ivory Wayans had this show called In Living Color. And he had two guys, and he said the Home Shopping Network. Keenan Wayans had the Homeboy Shopping Network, and the homeboys would pitch their products, and when the time come to name the price, it'd be more money, more money, more money. And that's clearly the only thing Trump sees is, if you want to get noticed, I think it'd be better if you had like a dollar sign, or, or something to, that Trump might recognize. You can only hope that he would recognize that, but, what would you bet on? Absolutely nothing, right? So how about guys, hang on. Let's see. I know. How about a quick message? How about I will be right back. Let's hope we did that right. Okay, guys. Guys, I am back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm back. And it was funny. The other day I had to uh, wash my hands or pee really badly. And I didn't take the opportunity. And because I didn't take the opportunity, I was miserable for hours. So to make a long story even longer, if you gotta go, don't wait. Time and tide and a few other things wait for no man. So let's kind of get those things together. And how about uh and just to show you what he's made of. And keep in mind, we used to be a really proud nation. We had like what the bugle and the drum, and we were patriots. We think about this. We won 2 world wars. Of course, we kind of lost Vietnam and obviously lost Iran. Um, but those are you can't. People need to take this seriously. I just don't know why there's so much complacency. There's what 120 days or so till November 2nd, and there's not a lot of organizing because it's there. There's going to be rallies like you wouldn't believe. But this is going to have a major turnout to have an effect. Anything less than a landslide is going to look closer than it should, and we can't open any opportunities or any avenues for the election to be tampered with. And I think we all realize that's a distinct possibility. I mean, America used to be like, truth, justice, and the American way. Well, truth and justice in the American way work out uh, if you're objective. But when a lie is the truth and the American way is distorted, everything gets distorted. Think about it, truth, justice, and the American way. But under the president, truth is what he says it is, which is always really funny. And at this point, after this, what's on like the 50 billionth lie or something. Uh, but we've just never had to deal with this. And something else that's really compounding everything is the way everybody falls in line with him. The God knows he wouldn't get the big beautiful bill done without the House Republicans in lockstep. Uh, the guys just when you govern by fear or intimidation, it's the ultimate way of saying you don't have any real strength. You're just kind of a coward. Now, people might be afraid of you, but you're still a coward. And I think that as time moves on and we get closer and closer to the election, I expect his meltdowns to happen more and more frequently because what he's done cannot withstand anybody scrutinizing it. I mean, if you look at every appointment everywhere, it's been done to serve him and not the country. And, when you hire people and you admittedly don't hire the best, then what do you get? Dreck, I think is the word of bupkis, and don't forget, 1 skadukas is 10 bupkises, so you really don't want to get skadukas. And think about that. He's got a direct line of power from him into almost every federal district court. And God knows he's influenced people locally. Um, and, but under it all, that's all based on lies. There's a reason January 6th was called the big lie, right? And keep in mind, I watched that. I hope you guys did. All the witnesses were Republicans. And I'll be the first one to tell you that, there was no defense put on. But I wouldn't mind going back and having a defense put on. Matter of fact, I think it ought to be like two really top law schools, and one gets to prosecute, one gets to defend, and let's hear the arguments and let's kind of see what regular people think. Wouldn't that be a real treat? How regular people paid attention to in this administration, and not just as a way to cut. And while we're talking about all that, uh, you know, it seems like so long ago because there have been so many outrages, but it just wasn't that long ago that he and Elon were butting up in the White House with a chainsaw to show what they're going to do to the government. He's gonna hack it away. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that that's probably not the most beneficial way to go. And we've seen the mistakes that were made. We've seen the theft of the sensitive data that Doge kind of just walked out with. And Trump signed an executive order saying here. And what do you do? Yeah, you guys elected him. You gave him power. And of course, the what really compounds everything was, I think, before the immunity decision, Trump assumed there were some vague guardrails somewhere, and that he might have had some, moral position. But now that he's got immunity, he's just set out to do exactly what he wants. And exactly what he wants is to be worshipped. And I guess he's remaking Washington in his image so that he can be worshipped. So you can worship at the Trump reflecting pool. You can worship at the Trump UFC fight on the White House lawn. You can worship whatever it is. I'm going to suggest to you that you're not really when the American people get ticked and they realize how badly they've been taken, you have to expect something in the neighborhood of a landslide victory, or take however you look at it. How about a landslide defeat for Trump? I'll take either one of those. Uh, but we need, it's the need, the narcissistic need to be the center of attention, to break other people's stuff so that only his stuff. He wants everything to be his. If it's not his, it gets broken and destroyed. And look at the world. How about Venezuela? Those guys have real structural problems. They'll never have any kind of stability with Delcy Rodriguez in there to continue Maduro's uh, campaign, or not campaign, Maduro's rule. This is, and how about why are we making life for the Cubans so difficult? I'm first one to tell you they're 90 miles away. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that. Uh, but that's just not reality anymore. And I think that's the real tell here is the intentional distortion of reality in favor of an alternative reality that that Trump writes. And the truth of the matter is, we can't keep being America as far as wanting immigrants to come here with the hope of a better life, and with the hopes that if they do okay, their children will have an opportunity to better life. That's kind of the American promise. If you come here and work hard and be one of us, then we'll do everything we can in the way of freedom to help. But that's not that's not the desired outcome for Trump. He has effectively choked off immigration into the U.S., and he has accelerated the outflow of PhDs and research scientists and just about every professional area of the government, and replace them with stupid people who are what? Loyal to him. Because don't forget, he doesn't hire based on ability. He hires based on willingness to, I guess, for lack of a better word, kiss behind. And there's no shortage of people lined up to kiss his behind. They obviously do so hoping to, get a little moolah out of the deal, because that's just Trump. That's how he is. Everything is a deal. And like I said, when everything's a deal, nothing's a deal. I can't wait. I really want him to go in the Oval Office and please God explain how we won in Iran. And I heard today he's going to threaten to go back and bomb the civilian energy sites that they already told him were a war crime. And you know, Taco Trump always chickens out. The fact is, the older he gets, and the more those arteries harden in the brain, the less. If you think he's erratic now, just wait till the dementia kicks in full blown. And the reason you can tell that dementia is kind of more than a passing concern is otherwise. Why else would someone brag about taking a cognitive test that involves telling the difference between a lion and a rhinoceros? I don't think the ability to tell a lion from a rhinoceros or a rhinoceros from a lion ought to be any sort of a qualifying factor for the presidency of the United States. I don't want to go too far out on a limb here, but again, you gotta you gotta wonder when you see and hear this stuff. Um, but anyway, what really on top of everything else is let's take this Kennedy Center thing. He couldn't stand not to have his name on there in top billing, right? The was it the Donald J. Trump and John F. Kennedy, Center for the Arts. I'd love to know what The only connection Trump may have to the arts is he might have the ability to spell art. Now, I wouldn't necessarily rush out and bet on it, but just maybe he can spell art. And that's and you know what else we ought to mention about art? Of course, art is whatever it is, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and all this stuff. But Trump was so shady with his own personal charity that with money he puts into the charity, what do they do? Do they give it away to poor people? Do they buy people food? They give people clothes, shoes. Do they do any underwear? Do they do anything? Well, no. It seems like the Trump charity's greatest accomplishment was to use its funding to buy a picture of Trump himself, or portrait of Trump himself. Was it like 17,000 or 27,000, whatever it was? That's the kind of guy that that's running our country, and he's in NATO now, yelling and bitching and screaming, and these are our allies, and it's just a needless, stupid, childish stuff that that are going to ruin us even more. And when I say stupid, childish stuff, I mean like the Italian Prime Minister Georgia Maloney, and that is with Trump saying, "Oh, she begged me for a photo. I felt sorry for her, so I let her take a photo with me." Now, anyone with any sort of uh, knowledge of Trump's background would probably realize that he's lying. Okay, and that's bad enough. But lying and picking a fight with an ally is just insane. He could have kept his. I was going to say he could have kept his mouth shut. But, ladies and gentlemen, the truth of the matter is he cannot keep his mouth shut. And again, when you're the brightest guy around, when you're the smartest guy in the room, you really don't need briefings or opinions or consultations. You know what's right. Is that a little scary? And how do you know it's right? Because it feels good in my gut. Would you repeat that, please? I think it's a good decision because it felt good in my gut. And did you look at any other positions on that? No, I know this is right. Can you see the opportunities for disaster? I mean, we've already lost the leadership position in the free world, and the only thing left to lose is our individual freedoms. And can anybody been paying attention to all this? And what's the most important personal freedom that we have? Is it the freedom of the press, the freedom of the assembly, the freedom of speech? What is it? And I'm going to submit one thing. The most basic thing is the right to vote. The most important individual right is the right to vote. The right to vote, not the privilege, not not you can buy it, but the right to vote. You have a right as a citizen of this country to have a voice in government and who leads us. And you can remember that line about, and they shall derive their power from the just consent of the governed. Is that not a perfect transaction? We elect you and give you power, and in turn, you govern us fairly. And Americans have always had this notion of, we've screwed lots of people, and I won't really go into it now, but we've always thought of ourselves as having some sort of an idea as to basic fairness. And I think the British and the Magna Carta maybe was was the first time that the word jury of your peers had been established, and people started to have a little more stake in their future. That's why the Protestants left England. They didn't like what Henry VIII did to his wife and the whole Anne Boleyn or Anne Hathaway. Anne Boleyn. I think Anne Hathaway's the actor or actress. Uh, but you just cannot let this go on. I mean, I'm taking the position that not only do I want the dog catcher to be a Democrat, I not only want the assistant dog catcher to be a Democrat, I want the assistant dog catcher to the assistant dog catcher to be a Democrat. That's how far down the line we go. And I love chatting with people that don't get a lot of airtime. I love talking with school board candidates. I think that's just incredibly fascinating. Supervisor candidates, city council candidates. These guys are on the front lines. And, when you think about who you interact with, you may read about the president daily or, whatever else, but who do you really interact with? Is it the local water board maybe? Or how about a little zoning issue? And, all politics, I'm not going to say all politics is local, but I will say that all politics begin as local. And that's why, of course, people choose the offices they choose to run in. Usually, they will run for a lower level office, like maybe city council. And I didn't say unimportant now. I just meant lower level. Uh, there's like I say, the city council, the state assembly, the state senate. How about state controller or state attorney general? We've got lots of positions that depend on hiring people that have ability and not necessarily giving it to like somebody who slips you a $10 bill. And oh, by the way, has anybody begun to calculate how much the what do you call it, the pardon sales are going? Now, I think a presidential pardon is at least $1 million, and it would probably have to be five. But by the time you paid everybody off along the way to get Trump his two or three. So, and let's can we take a step backwards and let me remind you about that. I started this by going over how dangerous Trump is with inserting himself into everything, and and the reason I do that is because it's there. He does this, and we cannot. Uh, it's just not okay. I mean, you can't make $2 billion in office and not violate the emoluments clause that says you can't accept gifts or make money while being the president. Now, keep in mind that apparently this didn't apply to the $400 million jet from Qatar, or God knows what else. But guys, he literally wants to insert himself into our daily lives, and the biggest way he can eliminate us is a concern is by restricting the voter pool. Um, the fewer people that vote in elections, for him, it's a good thing. Don't forget, but for the deplorables and all that, he wouldn't have won the first time. And we all know that was just a reactionary fluke. People just wanted some sort of a change, and then they got him. But this time, it was completely different because we gave America a choice between a really competent person, Kamala Harris, or a monster. And America chose the monster. And, we clearly owe, we just owe everybody because that's such a huge mistake. I mean, the world is literally burning. Um, and another thing, when Trump explains to us how badly we beat the Iranians and how great our victory was, I kind of curious if he saw the picture that where the caption was millions of people turn out for Khomeini's funeral, millions, and those millions weren't saying thank you Jesus, praise the Lord, I mean that stuff. You know what they were saying? Death to America. And why shouldn't they say that? Look what we did to that country. We just bombed the living daylights out of them. That I tell you, my heart still aches for that bombing of the girls' school. It was 175 girls killed in a private school. And when confronted, and it's a Tomahawk missile. It was one of ours. It was kind of open and shut. But see, that's not good enough for Trump. He's got to say, well, lots of people have those things. Well, no, not lots of people have those things. And even if that were true, the serial numbers and the remains show it as being ours. Well, I'll have to look into it. You worthless piece of human excrement. You don't have to look into it. The evidence is here. You have to have a willingness to open your eyes and see. And we will never be able to have an effective democracy when the rule of law is undermined like it is. I mean, and how is the rule of law undermined? I'll give you a quick example. What were there, like 1,600 pardons issued the first day Trump's in office related to January 6th? These people broke the law. I mean, it's there in black and white, and everybody can watch the film. If you don't argue with it, give me a call, 949-629-3820. Um, but, I mean, it's just breathtaking the degree this goes to, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, as I always try to wrap this up, just because I feel my throat, my voice going again. Um, but there's a Latin expression, sui generis, and it's like one of a kind or one of its own, or in a class of its own. And and there's no doubt Trump himself was an aberration, but what follows him from their side is going to be just sheer fanaticism, and if they don't, they'll lose. And that's why every election is a battle. Who's got whose party, which party turns out more voters. This time on November 2nd, I think that beyond a shadow of a doubt, the Democrats will have more voters turn out. And don't forget, you still got the problem of the actual counting. What kind of legal moves do they have to have people disqualified? And another thing, when I look around at other news, other nations, other countries' news, like France and Germany, and I see what they are saying, and I see what we are not saying. And with one or two exceptions, like the New York Times, uh, Trump has kind of chilled freedom of the press and the First Amendment. I think people are thinking twice before they say something or do something because they don't want to be sued. And and don't forget, it's not like these guys play by the rules. God knows what they'll do. You could be, I'm not saying you could be shot, but I think when you had the gathering on the wall for July 4th, and the white supremacists were invited, and you saw that picture with the black woman on the metro, the DC subway. She's surrounded by white men in masks, dark glasses, all looking extremely menacing. And guys, I'm going to tell you something. That is Donald Trump's America. The fascistic use of force to govern. He's just a ham-handed guy, and like I say, he revels in breaking things, and then holding himself out as the savior, as the one who can fix it, after blaming somebody else for breaking it. He'll break it, say somebody else broke it, and then comes in and, oh, well, I can fix it for you. We've seen enough. Haven't we seen enough? I'm pretty sure I have. And guys, I'm going to try to end this on a really positive note, because I know for a fact that the Democrat clubs here in Orange County are working really hard, really overtime on every race. And California's one state we're a pretty big one, and we have a lot of electoral votes, and the sixth largest economy in the world. So California's a real force to be reckoned with. And I would like to think that if we can start to show Trump the door, other people will jump on. I'm not taking away anything from guys like George Conway in D.C., and I hope to God that the Brookings Institute has a counter to the Project 2025. And needless to say, it's got to involve impeachment and or arrest and conviction, followed by incarceration. I mean, how else does America regain its reputation in the world, other than by asserting that we are a rule of law nation? And don't forget, what's the opposite? What's the alternative to a rule of law? A set of rules. Well, rule of sovereign, or rule by one person. And we know that's antithetical to everything the founders wanted. So, guys, I'm going to, let's see, my throat's starting to go, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to sign off. And what I want to do is ask everyone just to take a minute and, look back. And if I'm wrong, please call in and tell me. 949-629-3820. But no call-ins seem to indicate that I'm pretty well on target. And again, if you want to call or chat, we're available we go live at noontime Pacific. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is your somewhat politically minded, or your semi-savvy, somewhat politically minded host, Abby Kaufman. And we're going to sign off for this Tuesday, July 7th. And maybe we'll see if we can go to our favorite taco place for Taco Tuesday. It's, that's always a Californian's most difficult decision, is where to have Taco Tuesday. But lucky for me, it's not going to be that much of an effort to know which taqueria to go to. So, guys, with that in mind, I want to thank everybody for listening. Give us a call, email, check in, be sure to follow us on Instagram at democracyradionetwork.com. And if we can do anything, let us know. And if not, we'll go ahead and get ready to check out. And what's that thing we always say towards the end? I think it's